Hey there, in today's video, I am showing you two different ways that I use collage. And it is not the painted collage that I have been showing you recently. This is like book paper and different forms of ephemera to create a neutral background or a background with a lot of texture. And so often this is how I begin, particularly if I'm working on a larger canvas or any canvas really. I very rarely just start with paint. Sometimes I do, but for the most part, I like collage because it will give me texture, even if it's not seen in the end result. But I'm showing you two different ways. Like if I want it to be seen, this is kind of how I do it. And if I don't care if any of it is, seen at the end and I want a lot of texture, this is how I do it. So I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate that your kind words and comments that you leave after the videos. It means a lot to me, particularly as someone who I feel like I'm a novice. I'm often stumbling over my words or I'm repeating myself. So anyway, I just want to give a quick shout out to you guys for following along and making making it more fun for me to create these videos. Without any more chit chat, let's get started. To begin, I thought I would show you the materials and supplies that I'm going to be using. Pretty simple. So I have the collage materials, which I will show you more specifically in a minute. I'm also going to just be working in an art journal for the sake of convenience, although often I would do this on a canvas. Usually I would do this on a I collage on all kinds of things, but for the specific thing that I'm showing you today, often I do on a canvas. I also have my gel medium. Today I'm using the Blick Artist Acrylic gel medium. You can use anything you want. It just essentially works as a glue. My favorite actually though is, I've learned this because I've tried every single thing, is the Liquitex matte medium. But I'm 3/4 of the way through this, so I'm just going to keep working through this. And they all work fine. It's just that I finally figured out my favorite. I'm also just going to be using an old brush with the gel medium, just because it's better to use an older brush rather than something newer, because often it gets gunked up. You don't get it necessarily cleaned all the way. I might be using a pair of scissors. And then to smooth it all down, I have a variety of different tools. That sometimes I use a credit card, old credit card. Sometimes I use a catalyst wedge or this Bondo, or just a color shaper. And it's just for smoothing down and getting out the air bubbles. I don't mind if there's wrinkles or texture, that kind of thing. But if there's air bubbles, then it isn't adhering smoothly to the surface, and that can peel apart and raise up. So I like to make sure it's attached. And if I do get air bubbles, I actually go in with a sharp tool and peel that paper off. So these are the supplies that I am going to use today. The reason I mentioned that I have two different kinds of art materials, let me just pull up this one first, is because I do two different things with different materials. For example, this first set is, I would use this on a collage that I was actually going to paint all the way over. Now, you may like to have some of these colors peeking through, but for me, these are the things I use when I know I'm going to put an opaque color over the whole thing. Maybe a tidbit of something will show through. So I would use things like, these are all scrapbooking paper. So I have a variety of scrapbooking. I just grab little pieces because I'm going to be working fairly small today on 8.5 by 11 art journals, or 11 by 12s. So I have some small scrapbooking paper. I also have these are like little decorative edges. I think they were back in the scrapbooking day. Not that I ever scrapbook, but I was paper obsessed. And so I used paper for all kinds of different things, maybe, making cards and different things like that. So I have some random, edges that they would use, or borders, I guess it would be called. And it does make some cool patterns and textures. So this is also something that might be fun. I used any kind of tissue paper. This has words on it. This one is, I love the old pattern, sewing pattern paper, tissue paper. It's awesome. Actually, any kind of tissue paper would work if you just have some on hand. It wrinkles nicely. You can already see there's wrinkles in this. And so when that goes down, not only is it transparent, but it will allow for wrinkles. And if you want to add more wrinkles, which is something I really like, it's an easy way to do it. And you can know that it adheres completely. I also use things like old stamps. I use old maps. I use the word old. You could use new maps. You could use new stamps. but I tend to really gravitate towards older papers and older kind of ephemera. So this is just a doily, and this is not old, but you can get these, I think, at the dollar store, anywhere, you know, big, small, whatever. I do like this craft color. Then I also have a bunch of different pattern paper. Like this actually has like beading sewed into it. I'm sure this is in the same section, the specialty paper for like scrapbooking. And so is this one. I don't know if you could kind of see the texture in here, but it's like a floral print. And so when you put this down and you paint over it and then glaze it, it leaves a really beautiful texture and pattern. I also have used, this is actually a border, a wallpaper border. And I found this at the thrift store, and it's really kind of fun. You can tear it into strips or use it as a big piece. And this actually happens to be very textured. So super cool. Another thing I like using, especially when I'm going to paint, you know, over it, is different fabric pieces. So hopefully you can see this. I'll put it on here. Maybe it's better. You can see this is very textured. So I often, when I'm at the thrift store, I will look for different fabrics, even if it's clothing. Sometimes I will use just random pieces of cotton fabric, and I tear it apart. This one is actually in a square, which is kind of unusual. And I think I have actually tea dyed this because I've done a lot of different experimenting and just wanting to see how it would turn out. So I'm like you guys. I follow all kinds of YouTubers. I take all kinds of online classes. And so I'll try all kinds of stuff. So here's just more fabric pieces. I actually love all this kind of stuff. I just think it can lend itself to some really cool looks and textures underneath the collage. Obviously, here's a piece of burlap, which is super cool just to use. And you can fray it as much as you want. And even the little pieces off of there can be really fun. Okay, this is like a book spine. This also, okay, this is crazy, but this is little book parts too. I can't get rid of anything, and I want to use it in different collage pieces. This is also, I think, vintage paper from a book cover, you know, the paper book covers, and it feels very fragile. It feels like I could just rip this to bits, but it's another easy thing to put down. This is one of my favorites, which I know probably looks like nothing, but it is drywall tape, and you can get it in different sizes. And I like to put this down. It leaves a really cool texture, and often I will take my scissors and, you know, cut it into different sizes and different shapes, and then put it down in different ways. So this piece of cardboard I was holding all this. So anyway, this is the collage that I use. And obviously there's way more than this. Use your imagination. And I'm sure you have thought of a million things more, but these are the kind of things that I use when I'm planning to put an opaque paint over the top. I'm not usually going to let this stuff show through. So now, next I'm going to show you what I use, which is a much simpler supplies. Well, I'll just bring it right here. Why am I saying I'm going to show it to you when it's right here? Okay, I'm going to grab this over. Okay, so you can see the color palette immediately is very subtle, and it's all book paper. And really if I'm going to use a transparent, if I'm going to paint something and then I want this to show through, typically I only want book paper or music paper or something like that, bits and pieces to show through. I'm not usually interested in having something like this show through. Although it would be super cool, it's not usually my style. So, you know, there's no right or wrong way. It's just what do you like and how do you like it, and then just do more of that. That's kind of the thinking. So these are the kind of things that I'll use with little text, little words. This is actually some kind of deli paper that has text on it. Again, I would use the sewing paper, but not with a lot of the marks, maybe a little bit, but I like the color, and so I would use it for that. I actually have some kind of vintage writing text paper that is kind of fun to have on there, although it's not as interesting, but the stripes are kind of fun, you know, to have. Again, music paper, and then a variety of book papers. Now, if I have foreign language, that just makes me so happy. So these are all foreign language. Now, if I have someone as handwritten on here, that makes me so happy too. So that I would try to not completely cover up if possible. Sometimes it is water soluble, so it will blend and smear when that happens, when I put it down. But it is super fun to have, and it just lends itself to some more interest, in my opinion. And I do like
like title pages, content. Well, this has a photo on the back. You can see through it. I guess I'm not sure how that would work, but I like numbers. I mean, these are just super cool, and it could be that I just use a section of that. Again, I might put it up, and if I didn't like how it looked, then I might paint over it too. So obviously, when you're starting, you just don't know. I'm just showing you a lot of different kinds. This has a lot of cool text, different numbers, biology, special signs and symbols. This is from a gardening book. I actually even like this edge. That would be just something really, really cool to use. So, just lots of book paper. This is from some kind of math book. And this is probably from some kind of chemistry book. But, you find these at the thrift store, and it's like, these were just textbooks or something. And the paper is the patina is so awesome. And then here is some more music paper. And this is super cool because there's the writing on it, and, just adds that extra special look to it. So when I am going to do, let's say, for example, if I'm going to do a portrait, I might use this paper, knowing that I want text in the background. I'm not going to paint over it, but let's just say I want a lot of texture. I will use this, and then I do something over the top of it. But usually you wouldn't see this. You would just see it physically. You would just see it as the cool texture that it creates. So I'm going to show you the examples here in a minute. We'll just collage these right into my art journal. And so you can see for yourself kind of how it looks and what my process might be. Get started. You do not have to work directly out of your tub of gel medium. In fact, it's probably not advised because you get particles and things in there. I am not super particular, so I tend to work right out of my jar. If you're particular, then I would definitely decant this like a fine wine into a little jar or a container, and that way you can just keep refilling it from there. So I don't do that, but I think it's probably a good idea. So to begin, I just kind of put this down, and I try to be as heavy-handed as possible. And this is fairly thick, which I do like about it. And I do like Blick supplies. I just can't help myself that I am more fond of Liquitex. Okay, so let's just start there and grab a piece. I want to use as many different things as I can. Let's start with this old map. And I'm actually going to try to cover the whole page here. So you do a coat on the bottom and then a coat over the top to seal it in. And then if you can see even if you can't, I'm going to use the color shaper. I'm just going to, go over it and see if there's any air bubbles and try to pull that tight so that it gets a nice seal. And it looks like that is pretty good. I'm telling you, sometimes I'm tricked. Well, I can kind of see there's an air bubble. So anyway, just work it to the degree you can. Obviously, if you're working in an art journal, honestly, well, look, this can peel right up, so I didn't get enough over here. If you're working in an art journal, it's probably not, you probably don't have to be quite as particular as if you're working, on a painting or on not a painting, like a canvas that you're actually going to, sell or get rid of. I'm not going to use this whole thing because I want to use a variety of these for demonstration, but let's just use this middle part. And where do we want that? Do we want it right in the middle? Do we want to, I don't want it in the middle. Let's put it down here. It doesn't matter because I'm obsessing over it like I'm making something. But, that's part of it, decisions. And I will say for art in general, that is what it's about. It's like each thing is a decision. What you have to decide what you like and then just continue with that. It's not going to be the same as what I like. And I think that is the beautiful thing about art is that we all like different things. And so I would hope that, your collage, your thing that you do is different from what I do. Now, I will say I did not mention that you can also use the collage papers that you make. I specifically am not doing that in this video because I know that's something, you already know about. So I'm just going to start grabbing papers, basically gluing them down, checking to make sure that they're on there securely, and I will speed this up. Okay, so you can see I have put down as a variety of papers onto this art journal page, and we're going to let this dry. I'm going to move on to the other page, and I'm going to put that also in fast forward because basically the process is the same. You're just deciding which papers to lay down and which, in what order. It doesn't really matter. And then, putting your gel medium down and then putting it on top. So we will get on with the second one. This page is fairly dry. There might be a few tacky places on it, but I just for the sake of demonstration, I want to show you what I would do with a page like this. Now, I will say there's a lot of cool elements on it, and if you wanted to leave pieces of it or parts of it, certainly depending on your own personal style. So I guess that's the point I want to emphasize is whatever your style is and whatever it is that you like, let's just say you wanted this map to show, then let the map show, or these stamps or whatever it happens to be, these two navy patches. But for me, what I would typically do for something like this is use it as texture. So I'm going to just take my Titan Buff, and hopefully there's enough in here, and a brush. I just have a 1-inch flat because I really want to get it in. I don't want to just smooth it over the top. I want to really get it into the crevices, and I'm just going to, put my paint straight on here. So I'm not using a palette or anything, just kind of smearing it on. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this on and cover everything for the most part. And then I'm going to come back. I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to come back. Now, you can kind of see some of the darker colors coming through. I'm fine with that. That's kind of what I'm wanting. I just am not wanting to see the entire, all the color. I just want a hint of the color. So it depends on, like I was saying before, whatever your style is. Now, I don't want this to show, although I will say, this stamp, the postal stamp is really pretty cool. But for today, I do not want that to show. So, okay, we're almost finished here, but it's that simple. And I now have a fairly opaque background with a ton of texture. So it's that simple. So once this dries, I'm going to go back over it with the glaze so you can kind of see what the texture creates and how you can then from there respond to that, like adding different colors, adding shapes, adding all kinds of different elements because you already have this really cool textured background. I think I'm going to add, before I end, I think I will add a little bit more paint right here. I kind of want the white Don't really want a lot of white. I don't mind a little bit of this pink or this navy popping through. Okay, so I'm going to show you the next one and then we'll glaze this piece. This page is completely dry because it did not have a lot of texture, so it dried a lot faster than the other piece. I'm also going to use Titan Buff on this piece. I'm going to use the color shaper because I want some of it to come through. But I wanted to show you how Titan Buff can be used in a couple different ways. Now that one was a heavy body, the one that I used on the other page. This one is a fluid acrylic. So, but I'm wanting to kind of bring it over in a lighter way so you can kind of see how that goes. And again, I'm not really using a palette. I'm just wanting to just kind of scrape it over, cover up parts that I'm not as interested in, but I want to reveal and leave the bulk of it. It's just that I want to take away the what do I want to say? I wanted to say the word aggressive, but that's not really what I meant. I don't mean aggressive, but how I want to push the text to the back. So now when I go to create over the top of this, it's more subtle. And so I'm not distracted by all that text. I can now respond to this however I want. So you can see it's as simple as that. I'm not going to do anything else to this page. This would be ready for me to then begin creating on top of, and probably, knowing myself, this would be something perfect for like a portrait. So, and I love text coming through not only in the exterior of the portrait, but then also in the face. It just kind of makes it a little more abstract and a little more interesting, in my opinion. So that's as simple as, but in this case, you couldn't have it would be difficult to have all the elements that we had on the other page, because to just put a light glaze over it, it would kind of bring it all together, but you'd still have a lot of, variation and a lot of colors. You could try it and see how it works. But for me, if I'm going to do something like this and just do a soft color over it and hope for these elements, this text to appear on the outside, I tend to stick to a very plain color palette and then do something a little more bold if I'm going to use an opaque paint. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to bring the other piece back, do a glaze, and show you what that looks like. And hopefully that just kind of will spur you on to some of your own ideas and ways to use your collage. Again, this is not using any of the collage that I have ever made, that I've made or painted or done anything with. I wanted to use something completely separate from that, just to kind of get for the sake of example. When I'm making or putting a glaze over the top of just about anything, I tend to spray it first with water, because I want it runny, and then I'm going to wipe it off. And not always, but I often use the raw umber. I just like how that looks. And again, you could like a black glaze, a colored glaze. It unifies your page, but it also is it's a personal preference. And I almost always use a mop brush because it goes over and spreads. And it also gets into the crevices as well. And I also will wipe up the excess with a paper towel. Or sometimes I use a rag if I have one handy, but I'm going to show you my rag right now. It's so hard and chunky. It's not going to work. I need to get a new rag. So I really like to use my rags up to the best I can. And I try to limit my use of paper towels just because I hate any kind of waste, any that kind of thing. So let's start. So first off, I'll just spray, and I'll get it, fairly damp. Because I can do it multiple times if I put too much water on and it's not the right color. And again, I'm not going to use a palette, although you could. I am going to dip my paintbrush in water, which I have off to the side here. So it's kind of damp already to begin. And then I'm just going to drop a few drops onto this. And you can see it's already spraying out because of the water. If I had not put water on it, sometimes it will lend itself to, making almost a dot there, and it's hard to get the hard edges off. So now that makes sense. Hard to get the hard edges, or hard to soften those edges. So there you go. Okay, so we got it covered. Now I will say, if you're working pretty large, you may want to do this in segments, because if it dries or you get too much on, then it may not rub off quite as easily as you'd like. Now, I will say, I'm rubbing very lightly right now, because it depends on how much texture you want. As you can see, this was that piece of wallpaper, wallpaper edging. I can continue to rub this as much as I want, but I just want to show you how it got into all the little crevices. This is a little piece of that heavy knit fabric. This is that book spine piece right there, another piece of fabric. This is the drywall tape right here. And this is the pattern paper. And this is the paper that had the black. You can actually see the black coming through, which is super cool. So now at this point, you could have it right here. And honestly, it's pretty cool right now. If I had really spent some time on the composition, you could be done. I mean, it's really a pretty cool piece. But I'm going to just wipe a little bit more just to show you that you can keep wiping it if you don't like where it's how dingy it is. But for me, I like how it unifies the piece, and all those elements now look great together. And I really do like how some of the darker color is coming through, but not everywhere. So again, I could spray this again. It's still fairly damp. And maybe for the sake of demonstration, I will, just to show you, I can pull more off depending on how brown you want it to be, or how much glaze you want on it. So now you can see it pulls off more. You can see a little bit more through there. And I probably would have left it where it was. And in that case, let's do that. Okay, I'm going to wipe. Let's just say, oh my gosh, I wiped so much. I'll just keep wiping here. Shoot, I did too much. Okay, so what do? I spray a little bit more water on, and I kind of do it again. It's that simple. And then you can get it to exactly where you want it to be, and without the fear of I've messed up. Because honestly, guys, if you did it once, you can do it again. If you put this stuff down and collaged it on, then there's no reason that you can't do it again. In fact, if the second time you do it, you'll probably be way better, and it'll probably look way better. So, okay, I'm going to take my paper towel's getting pretty gunked up here, but I can kind of go over it. I'm going to leave more of it. I'm going to just dab at it a little bit, but I've got the brown where I want it to be. And what you could do is honestly, go through the piece and wipe off the parts where you'd like it to be lighter, and then leave, maybe I want this to be darker down here. Maybe I want to pull some more off of that. The book text is now starting to come through. That's very cool. So you just get to decide, what parts do I want to be browner? What parts do I want to leave how they are? And I think it's just a fun way to use additional collage elements to make something very unique. So you have all kinds of options. You have all this ephemera that I just used. You have just the book paper to make a simpler background that is already fairly unified for something that you wanted to make. Or you can use your hand-painted collage, and that is a whole different, that's a whole different thing. And I've done some other videos on that. I wanted to demonstrate the two other ways that I use collage and ephemera in making backgrounds. So I hope that you are inspired to go make some backgrounds, to paint over them, to create texture, to find exactly what you're looking for and what you love, because that's the whole point. The point isn't to replicate what I'm doing here. The point is to figure out what you like, what colors you like, what kind of texture you like, and then go and make that. So anyway, I thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.